Before we begin, I need to make a quick disclaimer. In the run-up to the launch of the RP7, Reloop did a teaser campaign with various DJs who play 45s opening up a case with one inside, in a kind of Pulp Fiction parody, and I was one of those DJs. Normally, I wouldn't get involved in promotional efforts like that, but I made an exception in this case because I was so excited for the product. Two things to know though. Firstly, I wasn't compensated for that in any way. As far as I know, this pair I have here are due to go back to Reloop after the review, and no money changed hands. And secondly, I told Reloop I wasn't going to do it until after I had tested the RP7s for a while and was sure that I did in fact love the product. And so I guess as I did make that teaser for them, you can consider that a spoiler for how this review is going to go. The story of the RP7 really has to start with Biz Markie, who sadly passed away in 2021. As well as being a legendary MC and producer, Biz was also widely respected as a DJ and digger of 45s. According to Mark Settle, former owner of DJ Works, there had already been images of a prototype 7-inch Technics or Technics turntable floating around for a while, but in 2013, Biz showed up using a pair dubbed the SL700 at some events. To this day, I still hear conflicting stories about who made those for him, and I suspect we'll never really know the full truth, as Biz is no longer around to tell us. What's not in any doubt is that since then, many lovers of 45s have yearned for a pair of their own. I know many of you will be scratching your head and wondering why anyone would want a pair of turntables which are by definition less capable than full-sized ones, but the fact is, it just brings a lot of the reasons we play 45s, the compact size, the portability, and just the overall cuteness of them, into the hardware space too. It's vanishingly rare that I will ever play 12 inches when I do vinyl sets. I carry 45s only 99% of the time, and so why not have smaller, more compact turntables to match? At this point I'll make something clear because people will ask, no, you can't play 12-inch vinyl or indeed 10-inch vinyl on the RP7s. These are strictly for 7-inch records only. 45 heads have experimented with various portable decks over the years, but those have typically been lightweight plastic belt drive affairs, either aimed at listeners or turntablists. No manufacturer has ever gone down the road of making a fully featured high-spec direct drive turntable in the 7-inch size designed to be used in a DJ booth, an equivalent of that mythical SL700 until now. Firstly, let's talk about pricing. The RP7s are due to have a street price of around €550 or $600 each, which is, in today's turntable market, very reasonable. Reloop had to keep that cost fairly low, I reckon, because I feel like for most potential buyers of the RP7s, these will be an additional purchase on top of a pair of full-size decks. The second thing to discuss is that where Biz Markie's Technics were shrunk down 1200s, the RP7s are not quite equivalently downsized Reloop RP7000s, the company's 1200 alternative. Some elements are indeed very familiar, with the tonearm being the most obvious one, and not just in its similarity to the 7000s either. I explained at some length in my review of the RP7000s about the whole handpin super OEM thing, but in summary, manufacturer handpin provides the basis for nearly all the decent DJ turntables on the market today, like those from Reloop and Pioneer DJ, with Technics being the one notable exception. This means that many of the fundamental features you'll see on Reloop's high-end decks and Pioneer DJ's PLX 1000s and Cross 12s all look very similar to each other, and now we can add the RP7 to that list. But only up to a point. The tonearm here, which I'll talk more about shortly, is definitely akin to a super OEM, but the direct drive motor and platter, putting the size to one side, are not. Those have a lot more in common with Reloop's RP4000 or the Pioneer DJ PLX 500. On a 12-inch table, I would find that potentially a touch underwhelming, but as the Hercules T7 and a plethora of portabilist decks have taught us, with a smaller, lighter 7-inch platter, you can even get away with belt drive, and indeed on the RP7 the direct drive motor feels great. Reloop claim the starting torque is 2.5 kgf per centimetre, which is equivalent to a super OEM, but in use the motor doesn't feel quite as aggressive. They also never mention if it's quartz locked, so I'm going to assume it isn't, and the wow and flutter specs aren't quite as good. In testing though, everything performed very well. If anything, that slightly less aggressive motor is actually quite nice when pitch bending with the platter, and the RP7s hold their speed well enough for the kind of beat matching you'll be doing with 7-inch vinyl. The platter doesn't have any noticeable wobble when you press down on it, and it feels good when cueing or scratching. The only criticism I have of the motor and platter area is that the platter is not lined with rubber or anything like that, meaning it does have a fair bit of resonance. It rings when you tap it. This seems like a bit of an oversight, especially considering the lengths that Reloop have gone to reduce resonance elsewhere on the deck, but in use it didn't present any actual problems. Moving on to the tone arm then, and here the part used has a lot more in common with recent high-end super OEMs, with a similar base, bearing system and rubber-lined arm tube to reduce resonance. Adjustment is all on point with a solid vertical adjustment system, and of course anti-skate is not applicable as it's a straight arm. At its core, this is very much still the super OEM tone arm, one which has been proved in the field for many years, including on a few turntables that I personally own. That tone arm being straight is pretty interesting. I totally get why it had to be from a manufacturing perspective. Putting an S shape in there would be impractical, but Reloop could have potentially added a single bend at the cartridge end as a lot of hi-fi decks do. The thing is, if you want the most accurate audio reproduction, you can angle a headshell mounted cart inwards, recreating that bend. If you choose not to by running the cartridge straight on or by using a Concorde type cart, then what you're doing is roughly equivalent to how Shaw used to suggest turntablists should angle their 44/7 carts outwards on a 1200. This, in theory, improves tracking performance at the expense of audio fidelity and will cause a slight level imbalance between the left and right stereo channels. I tested a bunch of different carts on the RP7s with the different headshell mounted carts in both orientations, and my conclusion was, whatever the theoretical audio issues are with Concords or straight carts, in practice they are so minimal as to be irrelevant. Tracking is solid with both options, but definitely superior with straight carts, and any sound quality difference is basically unnoticeable. I'll be perfectly happy running my regular choice of cartridge, the Autophon Concorde Mark II Digital, on the RP7. One hard and fast rule you must not ignore is that you can't run elliptical styly, either mounted straight on headshells or say the Concorde clubs. In that case you will definitely cause premature wear to both your styly and records. Either run that type of stylus at the recommended inward angle or stick to a spherical type. Let's talk features now. The pitch slider is full size, so no compromise with that, and it's accurate with a great feel when beat matching. It has no click in the center and has a button to reset the pitch. The tempo range is adjustable with plus or minus 8% by default as well as 16%, and if you hold down the pitch range button it switches to plus or minus 35%. Not the 50% of some bigger turntables, but that should be enough to satisfy most ultra pitch using turntablists. The start, stop and speed buttons have exactly the same feel as on a regular super OEM, so all good there. As well as 33 and 45, you can press both of those and get 78 RPM too. There is no reverse option, which I don't care about, but which some turntablists might miss. The target light is a replaceable plug-in type, so fully adjustable, and there's no mechanism to go wrong. As for connections, you get an internal power supply with an IEC connector. It's recessed slightly into the body, but you will still need an angled plug on the cable, otherwise it will stick out, and the same goes for the RCAs. That's all good though. I'd half expected these to have an external power supply because of their size, so the fact they've managed to keep it internal is actually really impressive. You have two options with the RCAs, the regular phono level output, which requires use of the ground cable, and you can also switch over to the internal preamp, which puts out line level and doesn't. I recorded some records in both modes, and I'd say the preamps are competent but nothing much to write home about, as you'd expect. If you have a high-end mixer, you'll almost certainly be better served by using the phono level output from the RP7s and the preamps in the mixer, but there's definitely a place for the internal preamp, perhaps when using DVS or if you pair the tables with a small portable mixer, many of which are on the more affordable side. The line output could also work really nicely with an external fader for a more portablism oriented setup. One final thing to note on the outputs, like with other Reloop turntables, turning off the power switch on top of the deck is actually, turning off the power. It's not a motor off switch. So if you turn that off in line level mode, it will kill the preamp and therefore the sound as well. That's another reason I'll generally stick with the phono level output, but it's still nice to have the option. We now come to the thing which I was most concerned about with the RP7s, the thing I just had to test before making that teaser video, the isolation performance. I could tell that the performance fundamentals were going to be good, but this was the one area where Reloop had the potential to really mess things up if they weren't careful. The RP7 weighs in at 5.7 kilograms, which is obviously lighter than most turntables. It's much smaller, but relatively not especially light. A Technics Mark 7 weighs 9.6 kilograms, and a Mark II is in in the region of 11 kilograms. It doesn't have the rubber base of something like a Mark II, but then nothing on the market today does. They're all plastic down there. As the RP7s were a secret, I wasn't able to take them out and gig with them, but I did do some rough and ready isolation testing by putting the 12-inch sub from a JBL PRX1 system on the floor and then on the desk, placing a wooden platform on top, and then trying a selection of turntables on that. I ran the needle into the run-out groove and then turned up the mixer until each one howled. As expected, the 1200 Mark II is still the gold standard, never bettered to this day. And the Mark 7, as much as I love them to play on, was the worst performer. But the RP7, to my delight, came somewhere in between. So yeah, I'm confident in saying they will hold their own in a professional high SPL environment. A couple of notes. Firstly, the smaller size does mean that they might resonate at different frequencies than full-size decks do, so a system adjusted for those may need some tweaking. But secondly, I was delighted to see that the RP7 feet, which are good in themselves, vibration absorbing but stable, attach with regular 6mm threads and are the standard size, so you can use off-the-shelf isolation solutions like Isonoe feet or MK Stands boots without issue. Some final things to mention, more on the accessory front. Reloop sent the first RP7 to me in a prototype of their flight case for it, which I really like. The lid is taller than the base, so you can use the RP7 inside the case, and it has a very sweet little slot at the rear, which is, I assume, there, so you can put the sleeve of your 45 in there for the crowd to see. A lovely touch. And I'm told that, although the RP7 doesn't come with a lid as standard, Reloop will be offering one as an optional extra. I'd assume the DeckSaver guys will also be all over it in short order. Back to the RP7 though, and look, this is one of those cases where I fell in love with the product the moment I saw it. I mean, just have a peep at them paired with this little Tomcat rotary mixer. If you don't think that is insanely cute, then I start to question if you even have a soul. That's not to say that Reloop couldn't have potentially messed these up though. If the motor wasn't powerful enough, if the tonearm was subpar, or if the isolation wasn't up to the job, then these could have been quite an expensive folly. But thankfully none of that is the case, and what we have here is a very competent professional turntable aimed directly at a community of DJs of which I'm proud to be a part. I'm sure these won't be Reloop's biggest selling product by any stretch, but for the fact they've actually bothered making them and made them this good, I'm incredibly grateful. So there you go, my thoughts on the RP7s. As with the Flux interface for Serato before them, these are an example of Reloop seeing a niche in the market which other manufacturers aren't interested in addressing and going all out to satisfy it, and I love them for that. Whilst these might not quite be the shrunk down super OEMs which I would have hoped for, Reloop have prioritised the right thing with the tonearm, and they've clearly put a lot of thought into areas like isolation, which is critical when playing actual vinyl. Of course, portabilists and 45 heads are going to love these, but I do think they have another potential audience in DVS users. Whether with needles or phase, these make for a great compact setup when combined with a DVS battle mixer, like those from Rain, Pioneer DJ, or with Reloop's own Elite. So they might not be as niche as they first appear. The RP7s certainly aren't as flexible as the company's full-size turntables. There's an obvious limitation in that they only play 7-inch vinyl. And so for most potential buyers, these will probably be their secondary decks. And I think Reloop were very smart to keep the price fairly low in order to serve that use case. In the end though, I do love the RP7s with all my heart. There have been many occasions in the past when I would have loved to have played 45s at a gig, but either taking full-size decks with me was impractical, or they physically just wouldn't fit in the booth. Most venues in the UK have been built around CDJs for many years now. So when these go back, I'll be speaking to the UK distributor immediately to buy a pair of my own. From a purely personal perspective, if these don't end up being my favourite new product of 2025, I'll be pretty shocked. In the comments, let me know your thoughts on the RP7s. Will you be picking a pair up? And are there any use cases for them which I might have overlooked? I suspect there might be a few. As always, sound off down below. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Beatsource Tech. If you liked it, be sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss any future videos. And hey, if you haven't already, you can try Beatsource for free and join DJcity for just $10. All the links are down in the description. I'll see you next time.